Thanks for watching the Inebrious channel. Today we're going to do old fashions. And I say old fashions because we're going to do three of them. The old fashioned is the most popular cocktail in the United States, and because of that there are variations all over the place. But in its essence, it is a pretty simple cocktail. It is whiskey, usually a bourbon or a rye, a little bit of sugar, and some aromatic bitters. The first one we'll do is super traditional, exactly just what an old-fashioned is. The second one we're going to get a little more complicated and do a Kumquat Old Fashioned, and I'll show you how to candy some kumquats. And then the third, we're going to go super simple with a pre-mixed old-fashioned syrup from Proof in Decatur, Georgia. I've got a link down below if it seems like something that you want to try yourself. So let's get behind the bar and do three old fashions.
First up, we're going to make an old fashioned in truly the old fashioned way. I like to follow these steps every time I have a new bourbon or whiskey so I can get an idea of what exactly the whiskey tastes like. Today I'm using Litchfield Distillery's Port Cask Finish Bourbon out of Litchfield, Connecticut. The only other two ingredients needed to make a proper old fashioned is a sugar cube and some aromatic bitters. I'm using Angostora's bitters. Usually an old fashioned is created right in the glass, so we'll start by adding the sugar cube to the glass and add 2 dashes of the bitters. Oh, I forgot my muddler. There are two kinds of muddlers on the market, one that has kind of a tenderizer end and one that's a flat end. You want a flat end so that you can grind down the sugar cube and sugar particles as cleanly as possible. Add a little bit of water so that you can make a really good paste, and then crush that sugar cube and really get in there to make as much of a paste as you can. Again, if you had one of those types of muddlers that has a tenderizer edge that's good for chopping up citrus, that won't work with sugar. And then you simply add the bourbon to the drink. Remember, in the time of an old-fashioned, ice was expensive. And so for a true old-fashioned, this could be it. A little bit of stirring, and that's all you need for a classic old-fashioned. But when you wipe off the table there, it's got a little bit of bitters in there. So that could be an old-fashioned, but you know, we live in modern times. Ice is not expensive anymore, and you can also make those beautiful clear cubes. So let's go ahead and get one. And of course, for a simple garnish, an orange peel brings out the flavors of bourbon pretty darn well. So that's kind of become a standard for garnish of an old-fashioned, is just a thin slice of orange peel. Express the oils over the glass, rub the peel along the edges of the glass so that you can smell that every time you take a drink. And there you have now what is considered a classic old-fashioned. I mean, I obviously know what an old-fashioned tastes like, but of course I like them, so I'm gonna drink this. By the way, Litchfield Distillery makes an excellent bourbon. So to make a kumquat old fashioned, you have to start with some kumquats. I like slicing them in half and removing the stems so that they can be eaten whole, even though they're a garnish. Watch out for children. Wait to let them decide if they want a half a kumquat or a whole kumquat. And you can continue until your child decides that they would like you to cut off the stem also. After you have all of your kumquats destemmed and halved, put them in a saucepan. So I have about a cup of halved kumquats here, so we're going to use exactly that amount of sugar, a cup of sugar. Add just 1 pinch of salt, and then 1 cup of water. Bring all that to a boil and let it simmer for about 5 minutes. If you realize you need a smaller pan, go ahead and switch with that out. And then after 5 minutes and the kumquats are glossy, remove from heat and add 1 tablespoon of orange liqueur. I'm using Cointreau. Let it cool and then separate your kumquats with a slotted spoon and put those in a jar, and then strain out the simple syrup and put that in a bottle. And head back to the bar, and it's time to make a Kumquat Old Fashioned. I'm using Tennessee whiskey here, George Dickel Sour Mash. What many don't realize is that a Tennessee whiskey is almost exactly the same thing as a bourbon, it's just charcoal filtered. We have our bottled kumquat simple syrup and orange bitters. So add about 1/4 ounce of your kumquat simple syrup, a couple dashes of the Angostura orange bitters, and add in your whiskey. And I'm going to say it again, an old fashioned doesn't necessarily need ice. You can give that a stir. And garnish with your candied kumquat. And there you have a Kumquat Old Fashioned. But I do want ice. Just to show off these beautiful clear cubes. Look at that, just disappears. See my video on clear ice makers to see how I made that clear cube. And there you have a Kumquat Old Fashioned. As always, taste test. It smells very orangey. Definitely get the orange from the kumquat syrup, and that sour mash whiskey is great. Our last Old Fashioned is going to be much more simple than the first two. For this one, I'm using Russell's Reserve Kentucky Straight Bourbon. 95% of all bourbon in the United States is produced in Kentucky. I'm also using Proof Maple Bacon Old Fashioned Syrup. Proof, out of Decatur, Georgia, makes 3 kinds of these Old Fashioned syrups. You can guess why I chose this one. Ding! There's some ice. Instructions from Proof are to stir this cocktail with ice. So I'm going to add 2 ounces of my Kentucky Straight Bourbon and 1/2 ounce of the Old Fashioned syrup. And we will stir for 30 seconds, but you don't need to see all that, so let's speed it up a little. After you're done stirring like a madman, grab a rocks glass with a nice clear cube of ice in it and strain the cocktail into the glass. Now I know the standard garnish for an Old Fashioned is an orange twist, but if you smell this pre-prepared syrup from Proof, it just seemed like it really needed a maraschino cherry to go with it instead of the orange twist. So I'm going with my gut here and adding that. A very useful but often forgotten piece of bar equipment is a giant set of tweezers. I'm demonstrating why right now. I'll provide a link below in the description and on the website Inebrious.com on where you can get one. So there you have the Maple Bacon Old Fashioned from Proof. And hooray for me, another Old Fashioned to drink. So I'll tell you, the syrup makes a great drink. Maple is definitely there. The bacon has just a hint, but it's good enough to give it that savory flavor. Thanks for watching the Inebrious channel. If you liked this video, hit the like button, and if you want to see more from this channel, hit the subscribe button and then hit the little bell so that you can be notified when new videos are posted.